If you walk into any organization, let me say almost any organization, you'll hear leaders saying almost the same thing. We need people who take ownership. We need executives who want to take ownership. We need managers who want to take ownership. We need human resource leaders who want to take ownership. We need employees who are acting like owners. Today, we are going to talk about ownership, and we're going to talk about ownership gap, and that's the gap between what you're expecting your people to do and the decisions you're expecting them to take, and the moves you're expecting them to make, and what they actually do, the decisions they make, and the initiatives they actually get to take. So let's get right into it. um, Almost every single company I get to work with and the people that I get to interact with, whether it's new managers, experienced emerging leaders, executives, board members, they all talk about almost the same thing when it comes to ownership. We need our people to take initiative. We need our people to act like owners. And despite all the organizations, despite all the conversations we've had about ownership, many organizations continue to struggle with this same reality. And here's how it looks like: people wait for their boss, they wait for their president, they wait for their CEO, they wait for approval, they wait for direction, they wait for permission, they wait for leadership to decide on key issues. They and then leaders become frustrated. They get to talk behind closed doors on how really people are just showing up, clocking in, or just logging into their systems and just do their work. Now they're doing their job, but most of them, they get to do just the bare minimum. And I'm not talking about asking people to do way more than what potentially they are getting paid for, or overwhelming them. I'm talking about people really being able to take ownership to an extent, think like the owner. And I'm assuming the owner is someone who is forward thinking, is someone who is thinking about growth for themselves, for the company, for the organization, and of course, make a difference in the world. Um, so again, leaders get frustrated sometimes by what's happening within their organizations and their teams. They wonder why employees are not taking on initiative, like I said, why managers are not stepping up, why accountability feels weak, either all across the board or within specific teams or specific departments. Why are decisions taking too long? And why is their decision making process, if they have one, feel so weak? The assumption is often that people lack ownership, because again, that's the conversation we are all having behind closed doors, and sometimes we get to share that with our employees. And that's a very interesting assumption. We assume that people don't either have the ability to take ownership, or they're not willing to take ownership, or they don't care about taking ownership. But what if that's not the real problem? And that's the base of our discussion today. What if people don't lack ownership at all? They can take ownership, because I'm assuming if you've done a great job, and most likely you have, of finding the right people, taking them through the process of hiring them, whether it's interviewing them, whether it's doing the background checks, getting to know about their background, what they have done in the past and the experience, getting to know their values, and then you decide to hire them and you onboard them well, you train them, and most likely they have been promoted. That's why they're leaders in your company. If you've done that, that tells me there's an aspect of that person that has ownership, self-responsibility, being able to do potentially uncomfortable things. So just by that, by in that context, I assume they have that. Then how come right now, at this present moment, they are not taking ownership? So in that context, we can say they don't lack ownership. Something else is happening. What if what they are lacking is conditions for ownership? What if what they are lacking is the right environment for them to take ownership? What if what they are lacking is just a place where they feel like, I am comfortable enough to take ownership, I am allowed to take ownership, I can take some risk? And we'll get into the details here in a second. So let's talk about what I call the ownership myth. And the myth goes like this: many leaders treat ownership as a personality trait, and it's not. Some people, they think some people have it, some people don't. Some employees are proactive, some employees are passive. And again, these are conversations I get to hear leaders talking about. And sometimes they feel, yeah, we are having a real professional and high level conversation. And these are just assumptions. And to an extent, they're just myths. Some people say some managers can lead well, or they are natural leaders, others just wait. And this explanation can be convenient because almost every single person you talk to within your company is going to agree with you, or they're likely to agree with you because they're experiencing the pressure. When you say, our managers don't take initiative, someone is likely to say, yeah, me too. In my department, I have this one manager who can't do anything or doesn't do anything until I tell them. So there's likely to be some kind of consensus that there's no ownership across the organization, all across the board in the organization. And again, that's likely to be a myth. So this kind of explanation is convenient, but I believe it's often incomplete because ownership really exists in isolation. If there's lack of ownership, there are some other factors that are either contributing towards that, or they're fanning the flame of lack of ownership. So really, lack of ownership really exists in isolation. Ownership is heavily influenced by the environment leaders create. And the keyword is leaders create that environment. In previous trainings that we've done, we've established that one of the responsibilities we have as leaders is to create a conducive environment for our people. Number one, to feel like they belong. Number two, to feel like they can thrive. Number three, to be able to experiment with different things, but also for them to feel like they are making a contribution, not just to your team or your company, but also to the world as a whole. So really, lack of ownership doesn't exist in isolation, and most of the times it's influenced by the environment that leaders create. So think about it. If someone is repeatedly criticized for making decisions, what do you think is going to happen? They are likely to become cautious about making decision next time they are expected to. If someone is expected to ask permission before acting on anything, then what do you think is going to happen? They are likely to stop initiating. They are likely to stop being proactive, because if every time they got to go to their boss or their manager and say, should I do this? Or what do you think about this? I mean, who wants to ask for permission all the time? If authority is unclear, and I mean the authority that they have, then what do you think is going to happen? People are likely to hesitate because they don't know the power, so to say, the authority and the power they have to make decisions, take initiatives, and get things moving forward. So they are likely to hesitate. And if leaders consistently, and I mean, if you are a leader or senior leaders consistently override decisions, the decisions you make, then what do you think is likely to happen to you? You are likely to stop making decisions. The issue is not always motivation or lack of ownership. The issue is often the design that we have within that organization. And in this case, the environment design, in this case, the conditions that have been created. And yes, almost everything we get to be a part of can have a design. Think about your personal life. Most of us have what we call morning routines, and we don't really call them routines when we are talking to our family members. We just say, hey, I like to wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do, I'm assuming you brush your teeth and maybe wash your face. Some people go work out. Personally, I like to wake up, and on the days that I want to drink coffee, because I don't drink coffee every morning, I'll brush my teeth, wash my face, and grab some coffee, sit on my little desk and catch up on my emails, and maybe write or do whichever stuff I want to do. So that's usually a span of about 2 hours before my kids wake up, and make them breakfast. And then I start my day around 8 or 8:30 or 9 a.m., depending on what I have going on. So that's my routine, but it's also a design. And that means if there happens to be a disruption of my design, I can trace back to figure out what happened. So let's say I have a day that I need to travel. and I need to leave at 5 in the morning. Obviously, I'm not going to do all the things that I do, but I'm likely to pick one thing that absolutely has to be done. And that's brushing my teeth, taking a shower, probably grabbing my coffee on my way to the airport, or I buy my coffee at the airport. So there are some things that can be done, but there needs to be a design. And if there's no design, then everyone and anyone does whatever that they want to do. So most of the times when we have ownership problems, it's because the design has been made it that way. The system that you have is allowing that, or it's not conducive really for what you're asking your people to do. So let's talk about the ownership gap. The organizations that struggle with ownership often have a gap. And again, in the beginning, I mentioned about that gap. Excuse me. And it's a gap between what they say they want and what their systems actually support. There are two things: what you say you want and what your system supports. Let's go back to my morning routine. My system says you wake up, you brush your teeth, you take a shower or wash your face, go make coffee, and then sit down and do all the other stuff that I get to do. So let's say I don't have coffee and I didn't probably remember to buy coffee. That means my system is going to be disrupted, or my Keurig machine broke yesterday and I didn't buy another one. Then the system is going to be broken. But what if there was someone like my boss who, this will sound ridiculous, but if I had a boss who made sure that I go through the first 15 minutes to doing my routine, and then my Keurig is not working, or I don't have coffee, or I don't have toothpaste, then the system is not going to support what's expected of by my boss. Let's translate that to a place of work. You expect your people to come in. For those who clock in, they need to clock into the system. If that system is broken and you're still insisting that they need to show you the timestamp on their clock-in card, I hope nobody still does that. We used to use those 15, 20 years ago. But let's say some people still use that. If you're expecting them to clock in, whether it's through a fingerprint or a regular card, and the machine is broken, then you can't hold them accountable. You can't say they did not do what they expected to do. Yes, they didn't, but the situations, the circumstance, and the system is not supporting that. So it doesn't have to be that complicated. It can be the small stuff you're asking people to do, but it can also be the big things as well. So again, if your system is not supporting that, there's going to be a problem. Some leaders say we want ownership, but they create what we call a permission-seeking environment. Like I mentioned in the beginning, in some environments, in some companies, you almost make it mandatory for people to ask you for permission before they make any decision. There might be a reason, maybe they have messed up before, but most likely it's because there's lack of trust. Not lack of trust on their person, but lack of trust on their ability to make the right decision or to make the right move. So you say you want ownership, but you create an environment where they have to ask for permission. Some leaders say we want initiative, but they reward compliance. That's a big one as well, where if people do exactly like you told them, they get rewarded. And the people that take initiative and they don't necessarily have to cause any damage to anything, those who experiment with things, and they get punished. Again, it's a real thing that happens in some of the companies. So some people say we want independent thinking leaders, but they centralize decisions. They say when it comes to operational decisions, the COO has to make every decision. When it comes to logistics, the transportation manager has to make that decision. When it comes to even getting a candidate into the system, the chief human resource officer has to approve, which I think is ridiculous, because you should be always on the hunt for good talent. So if one of your employees has a friend who is looking for a job, why not just get them into the system? And then the system that you set in place can do its work, which is doing the initial interview, probably over the phone. Maybe they do a personality assessment or any other assessment that you do. You do background check. It doesn't matter if when they get through the system, they are still going to be filtered through down the system as you go. So having a centralized decision-making system where the chief human resource has to look at the resume and ask all kinds of questions. And that's to an extent a waste of company resources and a waste of the chief human resources officer's time. So why do people wait? Why do people wait for approval? Why do people wait to be told what to do? When people don't take ownership, it is easy to assume they are disengaged. Again, that's a totally different subject on employee engagement. We assume that they are unmotivated. We assume that they are not willing to step up. And of course, we just established that's a myth. But most of the time, waiting is not a character problem. It's not a lack of motivation. It's not a lack of initiative. It is usually a conditions problem. If you forget anything else that I said in this training, remember that most of the times, lack of ownership is because the conditions that they are in, the environment that they are in, and what has been put in place. People usually wait because one or more of the conditions for ownership are missing. And I'm going to walk you through four different conditions that leaders must pay attention to. And sometimes leaders get to ignore either consciously or unconsciously. So one of the conditions you need to make sure you have in place is clarity. Clarity is big, and I think I've spoken about clarity this year way more than any other time before. I published a book called The Multiplier Leader: How Great Leaders Multiply People, Purpose, and Impact. And in the close to 2.5 years that I spent writing that book and also launching the book and having these conversations, clarity was a big one as well. Because what I established through my research and talking to leaders, which I'm surprised I didn't do that many years ago, is that when you have clarity, you are likely to move a little bit faster. Because when people know where they are going, they don't have to second guess themselves and what they are doing. So you're likely to get there faster. You're likely to be more efficient. But most valuable, especially for your team, their stress level is going to be down when they are very clear on where they want to go. So one of the four conditions you need to pay attention to as a leader is clarity. People need to know what success looks like. It needs to be clearly defined. And it doesn't have to be all universal. It's going to be different for someone working in accounting, for someone working in operations, someone working in service delivery, someone working in logistics. It's going to be very different, but that success needs to be defined. They need to know how it looks like. There needs to be clear outcomes. There's a need for clear expectations, and there's a need for clear priorities. Most of the times, and I get to have these conversations with leaders when I do my executive coaching, there's always an assumption that the job description, the one that you share with everyone, the one that you have on your website, covers everything when it comes to expectations. It doesn't. Now, you can be as comprehensive as you want, but the job description is not the same as expectations, because expectations get to change based on the prevailing conditions, based on what's happening. So let's say, for example, right now in our company, we do leadership development. We do business systems, or business operational systems. We get to install those. I write books. We do trainings like this. There are going to be different expectations. Right now, as we speak, we are launching actually revamping, because we already have it. We are revamping the Dynamo Leadership Academy. So we have a catalog that we are putting all those programs in there. So the expectations that my designer had 4 months ago are different from today. The expectations that my assistant had 2 months ago are different from today, because that's a main project. So you can really define those expectations from the word go, and especially when you're hiring people and expect them to be the same. So there needs to be clear expectations. There needs to be clear priorities, just as I just explained. When the target is vague, initiatives feel risky. People start asking themselves, what exactly am I supposed to do? That's a question that gets asked way more often than it should. When again, a leader goes like, and most of the times, by the way, leaders, because of their frustration of lack of ownership or lack of performance, whenever they show up to have a conversation with their team, whether it's when they are running their weekly meeting or when they're having one-on-one, you can sense the frustration, and it usually comes out as irritation. And they are likely to say, you need to do better. You need to perform better. You need to do this. And you are likely to have someone in the back go like, hey, what exactly am I supposed to do? My computer is not working, or we don't have internet, or I'm still waiting on this department to send me this. What am I supposed to do? And guess what most of the leaders do? Figure it out, because they're so frustrated and they can't think straight. So to avoid all those things from happening, you need to have clarity, and clarity on on outcomes, on expectations, and on priorities is going to help you big time. So um, people are likely to ask the question, what matters most right now? It needs to be very clear. With my team, the Dynamo Leadership Academy. With my team, getting out there to talk to people. For those who are doing marketing. For me, making sure that the programs are intact and I get to do this kind of a training and I deliver those programs, and also continue writing the next book that I'm working on. So those are priorities that are not going to change for the next probably 9 months. People are likely to ask, what does a good decision look like here? Those are questions they ask themselves. Sometimes they verbalize them, but not always. So as a leader, you need to clarify those from the word go. So when those answers are unclear, I mean, the answers to those questions are unclear, people get to pause. And pausing means they're slowing down, or they're really waiting for you to help them, or at least to get clarity and answers to those questions. So the key point is, when people are not sure what success looks like, they wait. And clarity gives people confidence to move forward. So one of the 4 conditions is clarity on outcomes, on expectations, and on priorities. The second condition that you need to pay attention to as a leader is authority. People also need permission to decide. Now, we talked about people coming to you to get permission to decide on things, but they need permission and, let's say, authority to make decisions. Not permission every single time, but a well-defined permission. You have permission to do this. I worked for a company that gave us a budget permission. So we were different leaders running different locations for the company, a national company. And I believe each one of us, I know for sure for me, I had an authority to spend $100 a week. Now, that was a relatively good amount of money. And because we are talking about over 15 years ago. And the $100, I had the permission to decide on how I was going to spend it to reward my team. And that could be giving people gift cards, or whenever they do well. We used to track our performance every day, and every week we'll have a report. So I knew those who are doing very well. If we happen to get very busy with a project, then I had the permission and the authority actually to decide how I'm going to spend my $100 that particular week. So most of the times I would ask my team, what do you want? They would pick something simple as pizza, and then they would decide what kind of pizza they want. They go buy it, and I pay for it. So that's predetermined permission. That's pre-decided permission and authority that you can give your team. So they don't need permission every single time. It needs to be permission by design. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just have a design system on how they can make those decisions. If people, and by people, I mean your team members. If your team members are expected to own the work, but do not know what decision they're allowed to make, everything starts moving upward. I believe it's 2 weeks ago or 2 trainings ago, I talked about upward delegation, where if people are not owning their role, then decisions are going to flow upward to their senior leaders. Questions and problems and issues and challenges are going to flow upward, and that's how executives get overwhelmed, and you only have enough time not just to deal with the drama, that's what I call it, or but also to deal with the stuff you have on your desk, and that could be strategic thinking or decisions on having meetings that you are to move your company forward. So things start moving forward when people are not clear on what authority they have to make decisions. Questions are likely to escalate upwards as well. Bottlenecks increase, and that means somehow, somewhere, someone is going to slow down, and there's someone waiting on them, and that's how people get frustrated, because there's an expectation on their performance on the other side, but they're waiting on someone else to feed them some information. So senior leaders get pulled into issues that should have been handled closer to the work. And what I mean closer to the work, when you think about efficiency, the more decisions you can get made closer to whoever is doing the work, the smoother things are likely to flow, the more efficient you're likely to be, the more productive you are likely to be. And I learned that many years ago when I used to do industrial engineering. And the goal was to actually find a way to save time, energy, money, and resources. And when you save time, is looking at, okay, I have 8 hours to do this work. How can you shave an hour from that 8 hours and still get the same results and not overwhelm people. And basically you are buying back time, the potentially to do more things, and that's usually not should not be the first go-to thing. But in the modern world, you want to make sure if people can do the same amount of work in 7 hours, now you can give them an extended lunch break, or they can take another break, or you can sit down with them to do a one-on-one. You can send them to a training. They can read a book. So it's not always all about piling up more work on them, because like it's likely to backfire on you and them, because they're likely to be overwhelmed. So that's what it is. It's about finding a way to have more decisions being made close to the person doing the work, or the work that's being done if it's being done by more than one person. So ownership is likely to disappear, or at least get diminished, when people don't know the kind of authority they have. People don't necessarily want responsibility without authority. I don't think anyone really wants to be given responsibility without enough authority to make decisions. And honestly, they should not have to do that. They should not have to take on responsibility if they don't have at least the foundational level of authority to make decisions. And if we want our people to act like owners, we have to define the space where they are. We have to define the space where they are trusted to decide. And the key word is being trusted. Not necessarily, I mean, if you can trust the person, that's great, which to an extent you will. But if you can trust the ability to do the work, and the ability to make the decision, and the ability to move things forward, then that'll be helpful. There's a job I got hired in 2000, I think in 7 or late 2007, early 2008. And when I got that job, during the interview, they told me really cool stuff. And the company was a great company. And one of the things they said was, Isaac, you're going to be the boss. You'll be making your own decision. You'll be making your own schedule, which was really big for me. And you'll be making other people's schedules, so you can decide. Because I asked them, okay, so which days can I take can I be off on Saturday, Sunday? And my boss said, I don't care. You can decide when you want to be off, Saturday, Sunday. Now, we were open 7 days a week. And what I didn't know was, even though I was the manager, I would decide when I take the day off. What I didn't know was that if someone calls in or someone gets sick, I was responsible for finding someone else to cover that shift. Not the HR manager, not my boss. It was me. And if I didn't find someone else to cover that shift, then I had to go in and cover that shift. That's the part they left out. I don't think they left out by, on purpose, but probably it was by omission. But I didn't know that. So I went in and I realized, oh man, I'm not just the boss. I'm responsible for everything. I was even on the emergency contact for the alarm company. If something happened at night in the building, I would be the first person to be called to probably drive and go check whatever that's happening. Could have been a balloon that was left when we were having maybe a team party or something, that it kind of goes all the way and triggers the alarm system. It doesn't matter. So basically I was on call 24/7. That's the part I didn't know. So we need to find a way to define the space that people are in. And obviously I'm assuming you're going to be very straightforward and not to hold back anything. So that's the second condition that you need to pay attention to as a leader. The third condition is competence. Competence. This is one of my favorites. So ownership also requires confidence. And confidence comes from, let me say, part of the biggest chunk of confidence for your team, your managers, and your employees is going to come from competence. And competence is all about knowing what you are supposed to do very, very clearly, the what and the why and the how. If you can take care of that, if you know really how to do, what to do, how to do, and why to do it, and you master that, you are likely to be very productive, very efficient, and that builds your confidence. Sometimes people hesitate not because they do not care, but because they do not feel ready to make the decision. They don't feel ready to make the step. They don't feel ready to be proactive or to take initiative. They may not have the skill, they may not have the experience, they may not have the judgment or the ability to objectively make a decision, and we call that judgment, or the practice needed to move forward with confidence. And that is why professional development is important. If someone is a junior leader, a supervisor, a manager, a team lead, they need to be developed. Um, One of the things we are big advocates for at Dynamo Methods, and I happen to be the founder of the company, is that people should not be promoted just because they are high performers, just because they're delivering results. They should be promoted because, okay, that's one of the factors to consider. They need to be high performers, but they should be promoted because either they have expressed an interest in leadership or they have portrayed qualities of being a leader. And some of them is being proactive, being a go-getter, being helpful, potentially the most helpful person, but they should also be told the truth, what it takes to become a leader. And it doesn't matter what you tell them, you still need to develop them. And we are big advocates for developing people 6 months before they take on a position. And if you're on a crunch, at least 90 days to get them ready. We have a program called um, From Peer to Leader, and that is helping leaders to transition from being an employee to being a manager. And actually, that's based on the second book that I wrote, which is called it's called Take the Leap: Mastering the Transition from Being an Employee to Being a Leader. So developing matters a lot. Coaching matters, and I'm assuming either you have formal coaching that you do within your organization, or you take a few minutes when you do your one-on-ones, either weekly or monthly, to get to coach your people. Practice matters. Them being able to do the thing that they are supposed to do every single day, over and over, doing it the right way, using the predetermined design and the recipe that you have on how to do that thing, so it becomes second nature to them. Again, when they know how to do it, why it should be done, and they do it over and over again, then they won't have to use extra mental and emotional resources. So their stress level goes down, and that's likely to improve employee engagement as well. So that's just an insight for you. Feedback matters. Obviously, if they are doing something a certain way, using a predetermined and predefined recipe and process on how to do it, most likely they won't get the highest level of results on their first day or even their first week, sometimes even their first year. So they need feedback throughout as they go through the training from you, because potentially you've done it for so many years and you know what to do. So feedback really matters, and it needs to be very objective. So you cannot, or at least you should not, demand ownership from people while starving them of development. Development has to be a part of the lifestyle, basically, within your team and within your company. Competence fuels ownership, because, like we said, when people know what to do, why they are doing it, and they do it over again, it gets to increase that confidence, and confidence gets to fuel competence as well, and it gets to fuel ownership. So as people grow, their willingness to take initiative grows with them. So that's the third condition that you need to pay attention to. The fourth condition, which is the last one, is trust. There's a book I read. The first time I read it was in 2008. It's called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And I ended up actually getting certified through the Maxwell organization in 2015. So it's been 11 years, and a great organization. Actually, I teach a class. I'm one of the faculty members there. So going back to the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, law number 6 is called the Law of Solid Ground. And it says that trust is the foundation of leadership. And that chapter really explains that when your people trust you, they are likely to follow you. If they truly trust you, they trust your intentions, they trust your ability to get the job done, they trust who you are as a person, your values and your character, then they are likely to follow you. On the flip side, when you trust your people, you trust their intentions, you trust their integrity, you trust their honesty, you trust their word, then you are likely to be willing to lead them well, and also develop them and train them and spend more time with them. And that means trust is a big thing when it comes to building a condition where people are going to thrive, and in this case, being able to take ownership. So trust may be, according to me, the most important conditions of all. People take initiative when they believe thoughtful mistakes will be treated as learning opportunities. So let me say it again. People are likely to take initiative when they believe and they know for sure that if they make thoughtful mistakes, and I'm not talking about them, sitting down and deciding to make a mistake. If they were objective about the thing they were going to do, they thought about it, and somehow it turns out to be a mistake. If they know that's going to be viewed and treated as a learning opportunity for them, and not what we call career limiting or punishment opportunity from the senior leadership, then they are likely to take initiative. If the cost of being wrong outweighs the reward of stepping up, then people are likely to protect themselves. That means they're likely not to take on initiative, not to take ownership, not to even propose anything, because the cost of being wrong based on what has happened in the past outweighs the reward of stepping up. And the stepping up could be, hey, if you step up, then I might consider you to become a leader. And most of the times, actually, employees get to look at their boss and their manager, and then they determine if they really want to be like their manager. And that means forget about the performance, forget about leading by example and all the stuff, cool stuff really we get to practice. They're watching way more than what you're showing. They're looking at, okay, how do you conduct yourself? How stressed out are you? What do you say about the senior leadership and your colleagues and the company when no one is there? How do you show up to meetings? Are you optimistic, or are you one of those deflated people? That's what they're watching. And whenever you tell them, hey, if you step up and you take initiative and you take ownership, I might consider you for a management position. Most likely their first thought will be like, okay, if a management position means me being like you, then I don't want it. Again, if you are not doing very well as a leader. But if you are very optimistic, objectively optimistic, and you are positive and you are forward thinking and you do the best that you can, you seem to know where the resources are, you become a big advocate for them to their senior leadership, you treat customers well, then they're likely to say, I want to be like that person. I tell the story about a leader that I had who turned out to be my mentor. Her name is Shelley. And I tell that story in the book, actually, two of my books. The Take the Leap, Mastering the Transition from Being an Employee to being, from an employee to a manager. And then also, Now That I'm a Manager, What Do I Do Next? That's another book I have. And in both books, I tell the story about this particular leader I had. And what this leader did for me was really amazing, because she showed me what it means to be what it means to be a great leader. So basically what happened, I got this position as an assistant manager, and then within 4 months I was promoted to become the general manager. I was over my head thinking, hey, I have an engineering degree, I'm a people person, I can communicate very well, I think I can lead. I was wrong, because within, I believe, 6 weeks, I lost 5 of my best people. And that means, like I said, I was the person to go in, work long hours, and literally I was working 90 hours a week. I was tired all the time. And I knew that I was really tired when one day I worked until 4 in the morning, really taking care of paperwork and some other problems that we had in the company. And I went to bed, and I was supposed to be back to work at 6:30 in the morning, because apparently someone was coming in to fix something. And I woke up at I think 5:30 or 6, and I dressed up. I was ready, good to go, and I sat on my bed, and somehow I fell asleep. And I didn't wake up until 9 a.m. And I was like, oh, Jesus, I got to go to work. And I called my boss. I said, I overslept. I'm so sorry. And that's when she was like, Isaac, you need help. So what she did, she came in, talked to me, and she said, I know you've been struggling, but the biggest problem you have right now is lack of leadership skills. So basically, she showed up for 2 weeks every single day, worked with me from 8 in the morning until 6 p.m., showing me how to communicate with my employees, how to lead, how to talk to customers, how to even step back and have time to myself. She even made me get in my car and drive. She said, because I never used to take a lunch break. I would just be there working all the time. And she said, it's healthy for you to step away and get away from this environment, because you need to recharge. And I kept on working and working. And she said, Isaac, this is mandatory. You need to tell me what time you'll be taking your lunch break. And literally, I want you to get in your car and drive away, drive off from your location. I don't care whether you're going to eat or not. And she was right. That was a game changer for me. So that particular leader really showed me what's possible. And I remember thinking, man, I want to be like her, especially within those 2 weeks when she worked with me. So yeah, when you grab a copy of my book, Take the Leap, and you read there's a message really that I have. It's called A Message for You. I get to tell that story. So really, when you trust your people, you are likely to invest in them, and you are likely to develop them. And when they trust you, then definitely they are likely to take ownership because they trust your intentions, even when they don't understand everything that you are saying. So the key question for leaders like you is this: How have I created an environment where people can think, decide, act, learn, and grow? Have I created an environment where people can think, where they can decide, where they can act, where they can learn, and also grow themselves? And if you haven't, it might be it's about time, I believe, for you to come up with a plan and do that as well. And obviously, if you need help, just reach out to us. Because when clarity, authority, competence, and trust, the four conditions that we just talked about, when they are in place, people do not just wait for direction, they step forward. Um, so let's talk about what we call the executive responsibility. And again, this conversation, yes, it applies very well to mostly to executives, but I think this is applicable to emerging leaders as well, or even someone who is thinking of becoming a leader. These are universal and timeless principles. So let's talk about the executive responsibility. I believe that ownership is not an employee problem. Okay, you can dispute if you want, but that's what I believe. I believe lack of ownership, if there's ownership in a company or lack of ownership, is not the employee's problem. It is a leadership responsibility, because we said one of the main responsibilities we have as leaders is to create an environment where people feel like they belong, where they feel like they can grow, where they feel like they're making a difference, basically making a contribution. So it is the leadership's responsibility to cultivate ownership. Leaders get to shape the conditions that either encourage initiative or suppress it. They get to create conditions that either encourage ownership or not. So how can an executive influence ownership within their teams? That's a big question for you and me. How can we influence, or at least build a culture where people will be willing to take ownership? And I'm going to move really fast here so we can get down with the training. There are there are four, but there are four simple, but I believe they are very powerful practices to engage in. Okay, so four practices. I'm just going to go through this real quick. Four practices that are going to help you to cultivate that environment where people can step up and take initiative. Number one is being clear on what you want from your team. We already established that. So be clear. Number two is providing training and development. Make sure that's built in to their development from the word go. And someone might come in with experience, which it's great, by the way, if you hire someone who has prior experience on what you're hiring them for. But trust me, there's no way they are going to be a high performer from the word go, because the environment plays a key part in their growth and the results, in their performance, and also the results that they are going to get. So training and development is going to be key. Some organizations have their own inbuilt training programs. That's okay. Some don't, and if you don't, then you can reach out to a training company like us, and we can help you with that. Number three is to build trust. Make sure you build that. And I believe in transparency. Obviously, as a leader, you don't get to tell your employees everything that's going on in your mind, because the timing may not be right, or maybe they don't even need to know. But I believe in trust. And I want my employees to know that if I share something with them, it's true, at least based on what I know, and I'm not hiding anything, because I believe if it's not true, then I don't need to say it. And if I say it, then we have a bigger problem. Most likely, there's an aspect of course, deception and also manipulation. But why do that? So you need to build trust, and the key word is building it, because it's not automatic. And then number four is to build accountability systems within your team. And this is not about micromanaging people or picking on everything that they do. Is building accountability systems that make it easy for them to even know when they succeed. We said that success needs to be defined. They need to know when they have really succeeded. So you need to have an accountability system, and that could be, if you're working on this project, we have milestones, which is necessary. And for after every milestone, just send me an update, or put an update in the drive. I'll be able to look at that. It's like, now whenever we do our program development, we have more like an assembly line where most of the programs, by the way, they are based on the books that I've written. So I get to craft the outline, and then there's a document called the program framework document that really talks about the philosophy and the program is going to solve, and the target market for that. And then after that, we create a workbook, and I create the first 3 documents, which get checked by someone else with the program director. And then from there, we create the facilitator guide, we create the slides, we create a run sheet for the facilitator who's going to run the program. We can have some cheat sheets if we need to do that. We create frameworks, the graphics. And so there's a process on how that's done. And that means different people are going to play different roles. And there are accountability systems that have been built, including holding myself accountable. Because if someone checks, so let's say I create the first 3 documents, I send them to the program director, she reviews them, she'll put some comments, she'll drop those into a folder, which is ready for review, and I'm the one to review that. She'll send me a text or an email or a chat on our system and say, hey, these documents are ready. It's my job to schedule myself and go look, and there's always a timeline. So building those accountability systems are going to help you big time, and that means no one is going to be guessing what's happening. And if there's something gets stored, or if there's a bottleneck, then we know who we need to talk to. We don't have to yell at them. We just need to ask. So that's why I'm big on accountability systems. So for 4 practices: number 1, being clear, providing training and development, building trust, and then having number 4 is having an accountability system. So the strongest organizations I know align all these elements together: the trust, the training, the clarity, the training, the trust, and accountability system. So ownership, again, in this sense, gets to become predictable because it is designed from the word God. So as we finish this training, I just want to give you a few final thoughts. People don't lack ownership. We've just established that. People don't lack motivation. People don't lack initiative. They lack the conditions for ownership. And again, we established that it's possible for you to build those conditions. The organizations that create the most ownership within the organization do not necessarily have a special kind of people. They really don't. What they have is that they have leaders who intentionally design systems that support initiative, that support judgment, that support accountability, and also support judgment. And ownership is not something leaders can demand. You really can't demand from people. It is something that leaders can and should cultivate within your team. So that's it. That's all I got for you. I hope this training was valuable, discussing about the ownership gap, and I hope you take initiative yourself as a leader to build those conditions where people will be able to take initiative. So again, if I can give you one kind of like a marching order, there's one small thing you can do, which is a small action step. In the next meeting that you're going to have with your team, whether it's going to be this week or next week, just ask them a question. How many people here feel like they have the freedom to make decisions and take ownership and experiment with a few things? Now, if you're ready for the responses, then ask. If you're not ready, then that's a bigger problem you have, because most likely you're afraid to hear what they're going to say. So it's okay to test your own theory. If you feel that you have ownership within your team, then why not ask your people and see what kind of feedback they're going to give you? And again, if you're lacking ownership, you can go ahead and build it. If you need help, by all means, feel free to reach out to us at dynamomethods.com. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next training.